Derek Carr's out. Derrick Henry, doubtful. Austin Eckler, didn't practice. A lot to chew on here on Championship Week. We're going to talk with a potential champion, good friend of ours, friend of the podcast, Vlad Sedler from FTN Fantasy, coming up on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. It's Championship Week, and there's a lot to chew on this week. I'm Jeff Erickson here with Vlad Sedler. Our podcast is brought to you by No House Advantage. Vlad, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Always good to talk to you. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's nice to talk to you and see you in person here before the end of the year. It just flew by so fast. Not only 2020 itself, but the fantasy football season. Just whoop, here we are, almost done.
I know, it's crazy. It's really crazy, and here we are. Hey, so I look up in the standings, and I have to look up because you're ahead of me. But you're doing well in the prime time. We both have an iron in the fire in the prime time overall. Having won our league, now it's a chance to win some money in the overall contest. Good friend Chris Liss is up there. Our buddy Nelson Souza is up there. A lot of familiar names. Chad Schrader with his 7,000 teams. He's got like 6,900 of them in there. So he's so good at it. But it's fun to have a sweat and be able to track things down. Who are the key players on your squad there?
So so right now I'm sitting there 29th overall in the prime time. So it is basically about 10 points out of cashing. So the contest pays top 22 for the overall. I think 22nd gets $1,000. Obviously, first place gets 250 grand, which would be phenomenal. I know, colleague Nelson Souza is there in first. Chris Liss is right there. Jody Ryan, even all these guys are gals are up there. I mean, really, it just comes down to what we can get done this final week. If you can score, 180, 200 plus points, should be good for the cashing. You just want everything to hit all at once. This is a team that I was not too fond of when I drafted it. It's something about it. It kind of felt weird. This was a Josh Allen team with a Travis Kelce slipping to the third round. And of course, as you know, it's a third round reversal. It was right on the edge. I think it was like pick 27 or something, but it was one of his max picks. But what ended up happening is this team punted receiver. So I waited on the receivers, kind of got my late round targets. Didn't feel great about that team going into the draft, but those guys were Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett, and Robert Woods. So 3 of the 4 have been working out so far.
Yeah, and now they all have a little bit of a tinge of uncertainty attached to them too. But it's kind of cool for you that you have a path that is less traveled. So if it hits, it's not going to be hitting with everybody else at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, the closest that I've gotten to taking down an overall, it was I think 2017 or 2018. I forgot the year, but it was the year that Adam Thielen had that big, massive, 3 touchdown, 50-point outing in the championship week. Back then, I think it was week 16. But I sat him, and he was relatively unknown at the time. He had a nice little string of games, but I sat him in my flex for Deshaun Jackson, and that was the big decision. I ended up 4th overall, would have easily won, it was 150 grand at the time. So I always remember that. But this was a very unique build as well. It was the year after zero running back was super popular. So everybody was taking the receivers early. I remember I pounded like David Johnson, Lev Bell, and then Melvin Gordon's big year. So I had my 2 running back spots and flex filled in all season long. Then had T.Y. Hilton. He was the wide receiver 1 that year, I believe. So just everything just kind of worked out. I didn't have to do much other than that last week where I could have used a little Thielen.
Yeah, so you're drafting 10 this year on that team. If you did 27, that means that you go Barkley in the first round? Who did you get there did you go a couple of backs in the first 2 picks?
Yeah, I did. I went Barkley and DeAndre Swift. So this would be a good time for Swift to strike quickly.
I know Jamal Williams didn't show up on the injury report today, but there's a possibility he plays less than he has lately. So that might work out for you. And you love this matchup against the Bears. So that could be pretty fun.
Yeah, and also I believe Swift played them, basically had the most snaps or touches. I forgot what it was exactly, most since week 1. So obviously Jamal Williams still leads the league in rushing touchdowns. They'll probably want to get him there and make sure he gets there. But DeAndre Swift, I'm hoping this is the week. I mean, it doesn't matter what he's done all season. If he can pay off when I really need him here in the championship, then I'll be ecstatic.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot to discuss. A lot of tough calls this week. Quarterback news, big news coming out of Vegas. Derek Carr is going to be shut down for the last 2 games. Third string, he's going to be a healthy scratch. I think he's even like leaving Vegas. So I don't even think he's going to be like around the team. Pretty much, he's going to be gone. So if you've got Devontae Adams, now that you have Jarrett Stidham throwing him passes there, I don't know if Adams is a sit-em with Stidham, but yes, I did do that on purpose. But
well, I was going to ask you if he was leaving Las Vegas with Elizabeth Shue, so we would have been even.
Yes, exactly. And I appreciate the effort. I'm a practitioner and fan. But I mean, there's a lot of chaos at quarterback. The last 3 weeks, there's been like all this transition. This week, no Lamar in practice today. Raiders shutting down Carr. We don't know who's going to be the quarterback. We don't know if Jalen Hurts is going to play. He was a DNP at the walkthrough today. Probably won't play, is my guess. I don't think Lamar plays. You go down. Tua's not going to play. Yeah. There's a lot of uncertainty. I have Tyreek Hill on my primetime team. I'm not going to do anything. It's not actionable for me. And I think Teddy Bridgewater is at least a cromulent backup. So, but Adams with Stidham, I mean, that's scary. Although Adams has had some bad games with Carr too.
Yeah, I think, Jared Stidham, it ends up being his first career start. So he'll obviously be pumped up for it. I'm sure a little scared, a little excited. But I'm thinking, if you are Jared Stidham, like what better way to kind of give yourself the best chance to at least, basically have a good outing than to focus on the guy that's most likely going to get open, more than others and make you look good. And that's really Devontae Adams. He's really the guy that you can trust most. So I would assume that Stidham will probably try to get locked in on him. I don't think the matchup is necessarily all that horrible. Obviously, I don't think Stidham is somebody we're playing outside of maybe, three double super flex or something like that.
Right. But, especially in a championship game.
Yeah. But the whole Carr thing is just so strange. I mean, it's not strange. It's very straightforward. It's clear. We're already kind of dealing with a somewhat shady organization that is, they're doing this for financial reasons, obviously, as far as I'm understanding it.
Yeah, and I can interject there. So the deal is, if he gets hurt in one of these last 2 games, his options for 2023 and 2024 kick in automatically. I don't think there's anything wrong with what the Raiders are doing. I think they have to preserve the options there. They can't let him get hurt these last 2 weeks. It's a massive deal. They need to have that ability to make that decision. I think they've made that decision. Which is interesting because then you get to speculate, okay, where does Derek Carr land after that there? Does he land in New York? Does he land in Indy? The latest veteran quarterback to go to Indy, and they can recycle him. I mean, there'll be a market for him. I mean, if there's a market for Matt Ryan, if there's a market for Carson Wentz, there's a market for Derek Carr, but he'll land somewhere. But it's kind of, he's on that cycle now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everything that I've been seeing on Twitter today where it's where do people want him to go? They want him to go to the New York Jets. Indy probably is going to, spend work in the draft to get a quarterback, I think, for sure. But yeah, I mean, you're right on Carr, and it's really interesting how he's been kind of a decent game manager over the last few years. I mean, I think what was it, 2 seasons ago, he was, had some of the low, basically one of the lowest interception totals in the league. He had a high completion percentage. And he was decent. He was never like a top 15 guy, but always kind of on the border in fantasy and was occasionally startable. And obviously expecting him and Devontae Adams to rekindle that connection they had at Fresno State would have been nice. We obviously had some big games. Adams ends up a top 3 wide receiver on the season anyways. But yeah, I mean, now leading the league in interceptions and just, man, it's been really silly what's been going on there. And then, of course, I mean, can't even talk about the best ball stuff that's going on with Josh Jacobs, kind of losing it right when you really need him. And I know the most forgotten about running back who was basically dropped 20, 30 spots back in draft season, Cam Akers, was the guy that you needed now down the stretch. It's crazy how this all works.
It's so wild. I mean, they were like a scintilla away from thinking about cutting him. They're trying to
Mhm.
trade him at the deadline, couldn't find any offers. They were just burying him. Like you saw, like, the way they were talking about him was awful. And now here he is scoring 3 times against the Broncos, who took on a full, like, oh God, I'm here in LA for Christmas. I don't want to
Mhm.
be here
Mhm.
mentality. It was pretty clear. So it was wild to see that there. My primetime team has Jalen Hurts. I don't know if he's going to be able to play. In fact, I don't think he's going to be able to play. I wish I would have backed him up with
Mhm.
Gardner Minshew. Instead, my only other pivot is Trevor Lawrence, who isn't bad, mind
Mhm.
you. And he got me that rushing touchdown last week against the Jets. So it had at least a salvageable performance. But man,
Who's your backup?
Trevor
Who else
Lawrence.
Oh, okay. So you have Lawrence. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's solid.
Yeah. Although it's kind of scary. He actually didn't practice today,
Mhm.
but that's been what he's been doing with the toe. That's been kind of an ongoing thing. Doug Peterson has already said, though, that Jacksonville's going to play to win. He's not thinking of benching anybody. So I was happy to see that.
Mhm.
Obviously, having no quarterback would really suck for the last round of the primetime playoffs.
I actually, it's funny. I caught a team at the wrong time. So I have a team with Jalen Hurts and Mike White as my only quarterback. So last week I was praying Mike White was going to play. He was ruled inactive early, that he wasn't going to play.
Right.
So I went into the week with no quarterbacks, and I'm in a runoff playoff in NFFC against somebody. And I actually have a 30-point lead somehow.
Nice.
Just caught the other person on a bad week. Had a little TJ Hawkinson magic. Dante Foreman, a couple other things happened, but now getting Mike White back, because I don't think we're going to get Jalen Hurts. Hopefully he steps up and has a good game.
Yeah. I like it a lot. And yeah, I don't think Hurts plays, but Gardner Minshew, Mike White, Teddy Bridgewater, those are your options to pick up this week. Who you rolling with?
So we've got Gardner Minshew and the facing the Saints, right?
Yep.
Yep, the Saints at home.
Bridgewater against the Pats and Mike
Mhm.
White against the Seahawks.
Yeah, I like the Mike White matchup the best. I think a big part of that game actually going over the projected total, Seattle and the New York Jets, would be the Tyler Lockett coming back. I mean, we saw how dead that offense was in the water. Very
Sure.
easy to read where the ball was going to DK Metcalf. You got Kenneth Walker wasn't 100% healthy. But so I think if Tyler Lockett is back, kind of give a little boost to that offense, get Noah Font out there full time because Will Dissly's now on IR. That'll really help that game come close to potentially shooting out. So Mike White is my favorite of the three. Teddy Bridgewater, obviously, kind of known as a game manager. New England is not necessarily the best matchup, so not necessarily a fan there. And then in Philly, you kind of got 6-point favorites. The weather, you're going to have some rain there. Minshew had that big game last week. I think he kind of falls back a little bit. Not necessarily a huge fan of him. Although the matchup is nice. Secondary for the Saints has been ravaged all season. Some of the worst cornerbacks in the league. So it's not a bad matchup per se.
No, it's not. It isn't. So, I mean, I think these are all pretty good options. If you're smart enough to have Jared Goff, I mean, I love that this week. Home game
Mhm.
against the Bears.
Mhm.
Indoor Jared Goff is always is a theme. It's
Mhm.
a it's a rallying cry almost. That's the highest total, I think, for the week.
Yep.
Bears and the Lions, and I think both teams moved the ball in that one.
Yeah, this is a game that was when Fields was during the height of his, just smashing absolutely every week, 100+ yards, and then he kind of set that in-game record for quarterbacks. I looked ahead. I'm like, oh, Detroit, Chicago. Let me see how many players I have from that game or from those teams in Week 17, because that should end up being a good game, or so we thought mid-season. Now you got Justin Fields. I think he's playing basically with a shoulder injury. They're not going to shut him
Yeah.
down until season's over. He'll keep running. They have no wideouts, right? I mean, it's so dreadful. They even lost their like third or fourth string Equimania St. Brown. No
Yeah.
Claypool, no Mooney. It's that bad. So I don't know how close of a game it'll be.
Yeah, I think the Lions will move the ball at will. I know the Bears have gotten a little bit better defensively, but since they traded away Roquan Smith, since they traded away the lineman that went, sorry,
Yeah.
and I just don't get old, dude. You
Mhm.
start forgetting things. But they trade Robert Quinn.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was just driving me crazy. You trade those players away, and then they immediately after that they were getting thrashed. Now they've at least normalized a little bit, but still, there's a reason why they're that's the highest total for the week.
Mhm.
The last quarterback I want to bring up is Aaron Rodgers. Been thoroughly mediocre all year. I mean,
Yep.
rarely does he light it up. But this week, Minnesota,
Mhm.
he gets them at home. And Minnesota's DBs are just terrible. You can hit deep balls against them. Can Rodgers hit those deep balls, especially if we don't have a full-fledged Watson this week?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, I played him on 3-game DFS slate, and I looked at his game logs. I'm like, the guy hasn't even thrown for over 300 yards in a game this season. It's
No.
truly unbelievable. You lose Adams, you kind of lose all that. He seems like really kind of unmotivated, unconnected with his team, and yeah. But this is the matchup, right? This would have to be the
Mhm.
play. I have another playoff team going where my options are him or Geno Smith. And I know Aaron Rodgers is dinged up a little bit. I think he's got a couple issues that he either was limited or missed practice. Today as we're recording on Wednesday. But still, I mean, Minnesota is giving up the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks and wide receiver,
Right.
combined, and most explosive plays to wideouts. I mean, it's as good of a matchup as it gets. And I don't why is Green Bay favored? By the way, that's weird. No,
I think they should be. I said
yeah,
so we do this thing called guess the lines where I try to, before I look at
yeah,
the lines, I set my own line. And I set it at 3. I set it as
mhm.
Packers -3.
Yeah, home.
The Vikings, I mean, they win, they know how to win close games, and there's something to that.
Hmm.
Uh, but I mean, their defense is really truly
Yep,
that bad. I think they're what, 30th in DVOA. I mean, they're really bad.
yep, yep.
Packers have something to play for. The Vikings, I mean, they in theory they have a chance at the 1 seed, but not
Mhm.
really.
No.
Um, I guess they have a 1-game lead over the Niners, and I guess that's pretty important. They'd rather play
Mhm.
that game at home than in San Francisco when they get to the semifinals, if they get that far. So I guess they have plenty to play for, and I'm sure eliminating the Packers would be a nice little cherry on top
Yeah.
too.
I don't know. I mean, just kinda I understand, yeah, they're at home and everything. Yeah, I don't see the Vikings not covering, famous last words. It's been, this is a good matchup, but, yeah, I think Vikings cover that game.
All right, very good. Our podcasts are always hosted on the Blue Wire Network. We thank them for that. Here's one of their ads. All right, thank you for your indulgence there. We've been happy to be on the Blue Wire Network all football season long. I'm with Vlad Sedler from FTN Fantasy. You can follow him at RotoGut. He used to call it RotoGoot, but it's RotoGut on Twitter. Vlad, let's talk running backs. We got to start off the top here. Derrick Henry listed as doubtful with game doesn't matter itis.
Yeah, that seems to be the case, and it's a Thursday game, no less, and a real shame for folks that are in the playoffs, especially, obviously in all high stakes regular home leagues, no matter what. I mean, Derrick Henry is your horse. Interesting things where in leagues where you can just pick players up off waivers willy nilly. Obviously, Hassan Haskins is a guy that people are picking up. I actually grabbed him on a team where I may not necessarily want to play Latavius Murray, for example, who now seems to be in a timeshare.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, if you have Henry, you got to pick him up. If you don't have Henry, you may want to block somebody that's going to try to pick up Haskins, either whether you start him or not. Those are the rules.
for
I think
sure.
is, but I think only if you are in like the championship game. I think it's a weird move. I don't know if you want to even go down this path, but if you're like out of contention, you should probably not be making waiver moves right now.
Oh, 100% agree. I mean, the
Yeah.
only exception to that it would be like the RotoWire Stake League, where we have
Yeah.
the stake bet, which goes through week 18.
Mhm.
So you have to kind of keep buffering your roster. I'm all about blocking the opponent. I'm not about picking up and then dropping so that they're
Yeah.
locked for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
I think if you are going to block an opponent, you have to at least keep the player on your roster for the rest of the week. I think that's my rule.
Mhm.
I don't. That's the way I think you should handle it. Now, Haskins, he was only on in passing downs. Is there a possibility that Julius Chestnut might
Sure.
also be the main guy?
Absolutely. Very, very possible. Who knows what Tennessee is
Yeah.
going to do? Not to mention, I mean, I don't really foresee them um, basically working with any sort of lead. So they may not
Right.
end up be trying to establish it anyways. And if Haskins is going to be getting some passing down work, then that's a perfect opportunity for him. Plus, you got a running quarterback there anyways with Malik Willis. So, but
That's
I
true.
mean, Tennessee, only thing they really have going for them good right now is their defense. Eventually, Traylon Burks and Okongwu are going to be phenomenal. They already are so far this year, from what I've seen. But yeah, I think they'll probably get trampled by the Cowboys.
I think so too. And if they're willing to shut down Henry, they may be willing to shut down key defensive players too, like Simmons or anybody else like that too. So, because once you go down that path, you just might as well go down it fully. There's on the other side of that game, Tony Pollard. He's not certain to play this week, and even if he plays, he may be like on a snap count of some sort. He's got a thigh issue, is unable to practice this week. He's going to try to warm up tomorrow before the game, but a lot of Tony Pollard managers out there in championship games. This is a pretty big blow. I think you might even see more Tony Pollard owners out there than you see Derrick Henry, especially when you consider acquisition costs.
Yeah, he's become my favorite running back in the league. Like, he just kind of timed him really well this season in DFS. Didn't get enough shares in season long, unfortunately. Just always, just Zeke lurking there, and Zeke scores a touchdown every game as well. So if I were Dallas, man, there's really no reason to run Pollard out there, especially if he's dealing with thigh injury. You need him. He's essentially the most explosive back in the league. You want him healthy down, for the playoffs, right? So, wait, they're getting in the playoffs, right? Yeah. So yeah,
yep, they're already locked in.
Yeah. So don't play Pollard if you don't need to. Just let Zeke run the ball a little bit. Let Malik Davis run it a little bit. Don't play Pollard, which would suck for fantasy owners.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, there's still an outside chance they win the division. It's very outside. I mean, the Eagles all they have to do is win one game and they clinch everything. But until then, there's that scintilla of a chance. Otherwise, they're locked into the 5 seed. They're locked into playing either Tom Brady or Carolina, or that's 2% chance in New Orleans, but it's not going to be New Orleans. No. I'd be stunned if it's New Orleans. But nonetheless, we pretty much know where they're going to be. So yeah, they could be shutting guys down in the second half too, which makes, when you're picking that game against the spread, it makes it a little extra challenging. Let's talk about a couple other guys. So we mentioned the Raiders news with Carr. What about in the context of what that does to Josh Jacobs? Is there a chance that they might say, okay, Josh Jacobs is going to be a free agent at the end of the year? Maybe we see what we have in Zamir White a little bit more.
Man, that would be extra tilting. I think the problem, I think the issue is, though, I mean, every league dependent, of course, but maybe a lot of teams that were riding Jacobs into the semifinals ended up getting knocked out because he had the bad game, or maybe they're not there. So maybe the advance rate for those teams aren't really there, so it may not matter. But of course, there are teams out there that have Josh Jacobs and they need him to go. But that's a really good idea. That's a really good thought. I like that. Zamir White, got to see what the kid has. He's got like a few carries on the season.
I know, it's been all Jacobs too. That's the other thing. I mean, they haven't, it's so weird how that story turned. Like, oh, he's playing the Hall of Fame game. He's the only starter. He might be a cut, or he might take every single carry for them. But one of the two.
It's weird, and it's the weirdest thing because Josh Jacobs was literally highlighted in my preseason. This guy. Why does everybody hate him? He's better than you think. The industry or people on Twitter just love to hate Josh Jacobs, and he's better than this. But I ended up with no shares. It was really weird. It was funny.
So I'm one of the love to hate guys. Not only do I not have him, Vlad, in 20 leagues, I told people not to take him. Yeah. I was like, pass on him in the 5th. You can do better. Worse. That was definitely my biggest whiff of the year. Not even close.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to see what Zamir White had. If I knew that he was going to get a workload, I would probably play Zamir White over Haskins, because I don't really see much upside for scoring for Haskins.
Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of upside against the Niners run defense either, though. They're nasty against running backs, so might be just a good stay away all around. A couple other guys I thought were kind of interesting to talk about at the running back position. I mean, there's no shortage of storylines and all that, but a couple other guys I wanted to talk about. Carolina Detroit backs. We mentioned a little bit already with DeAndre Swift versus Williams. Swift is another tilting sort of player. You can see the talent. You see these burst plays that he makes, making more of them earlier in the season than lately. But nonetheless, I really want to see a little bit more out of him. I want to see him get 15 to 20 touches in a game. I don't think that's going to happen.
And the worst part of it is that Justin Jackson is so frequented there on the field and get vulturing some touchdowns here and there, and then to be a DeAndre Swift person this season and to have him, especially, I mean, you used incredibly high draft capital for him. I mean, for me,
Yep.
I don't know how I got some of these teams in the playoffs, was just kind of, squeezing by with Swift. I would love for him to have been the dominant guy that he was. Let's see how it affects his draft capital next season. I mean, I don't, could he potentially fall to the third round? I don't know. I think people are always going to kind of love Swift for his upside, for his talent. I don't know what the status is of Jamal Williams next season, but that offense is just out of nowhere just becomes so loaded. You just never know where the points are going to come from. 4 viable wideouts and stud in Amon-Ra, the sun god. Jameson Williams is going to come on next season. Then you had that old connection with Jared Goff and Josh Reynolds during the middle of the season. Even Khalif Raymond stepped up when needed. It's really wild how much they have going on there.
So I think I have 6 championship teams, 6 championship game teams. Only one of them was really running back heavy early on. My best teams were all like Jefferson and Tyreek Hill, or Jefferson and one I had Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Debo. Another one, my primetime team went Jefferson, Hill, and then Chubb at the end of the third round because the third round reversal. If only I had done Amon-Ra in the 4th round. Oh, I don't kick myself over that one at all. Instead, I went Allen Robinson. But a lot of Kittle in there late. He's been a playoff god. So if I had that 4th round pick, anything in that, in that range, missed out on Jacobs, missed out on, a couple other good receivers. There was a lot of dead picks in the 4th round. I had one of them, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Amon-Ra, I mean, I'm really curious to see what his price is going to be next year. I haven't really done like a ADP for next season analysis, but man, he's just like a PPR monster.
He is.
And, the target share and everything. It's insane.
Yeah. I'm guessing, in my mind, I think he's like 2nd or 3rd round now, but we'll see. But I'm definitely very interested to see where he goes. A couple more running backs, the Carolina running backs. 1 week it seems like it's Foreman. The next week it seems it's Hubbard. Every once in a while it's both. The last time they played the Bucs, it was both. Both did pretty well. Big game coming up here. This is a must-win game for Carolina. They played as well as they've played all year, and Sam Darnold's actually done a decent caretaker job role. But this team goes by how they run. So, are you big on Foreman and or Chuba Hubbard this week?
Well, Foreman has been my he's been basically one of my flag plants since the early summer. So in every best ball, he was my 18th round pick.
Nice.
In NFFC, I was drafting him and thinking it was going to be like if something happened to CMC, for me, he would be the guy that I thought would, so he's worked out for me in a lot of ways. I do have him on that primetime team. He is in my flex spot right now. I am worried about the matchup, of course, because it is sort of, you got a tough run defense in Tampa. He's really boomer bust, right? Because you throw in Hubbard into the mix, and then if they do fall behind, are they really going to run it a lot with Foreman into the teeth of this Tampa Bay defense? I don't know about that. So I don't know, but these are teams with completely different momentum. Like Tampa Bay has stunk all year. Like there has been no real Brady Evans connection at all. Godwin coming off his injury is just the same pass, down the middle of the field every time. It's the same old stuff with this
horrible.
team.
That game Sunday night, I'd say it's unwatchable, but I actually watched it. So it was watchable, but man, it was a hate watch.
Yeah, and then you got Carolina on the other side with that blow up, like unexpected. It's really amazing. Like if you look at the team itself, it's not fantasy friendly whatsoever. But they've been getting the job done, and I think they're going to be really ready to play. I think it's going to be a fun, close game. I think most of the world is going to be rooting for Carolina in this one, and I might have to run him out there. I may just have to do run Devonta Foreman out there. For me, it'll be him or DJ Chark in the flex. That will be my big decision. And again, thinking about Chark, there are so many different options. How do I know if it's Chark week or not? So we'll see.
I love the Chark week reference. That's always one of my favorites. I think it is a Chark week, by the way. I think against this Bears secondary, I think you want that there, especially no Eddie Jackson. I think that seems to me like a defense you want to attack. So, but I like Foreman more than Chark. I'd be like, why not both? I try to find a way. But sometimes you're just so loaded, like your primetime team, that you have to make that tough decision. I have a home league where I started Rashad White and James Cook last week at my running back spots.
Ooh.
And I've been getting by with those two and Jeff Wilson for the most part as my running backs. This is another one. I guess it really was. There wasn't zero running back, but I drafted Eli Mitchell in the 4th round. So it kind of by default became, or maybe 5th round. I got Mahomes I think I got Mahomes in the 4th and Mitchell in the 5th, but regardless, it was not even, it was not quite zero running back, but it was pretty darn close.
Yeah, and it'll be funny because the conversations already come up of like, what was the optimal build? What is the best way to build this year? And you can literally make an argument for every which way because you'll have examples of championship teams that have it all the way. So really at the end of the day, it's right. Draft the right players, draft the guys that don't get hurt and the guys that break out.
As Scott Pianowski and Gene McCaffrey always say, any draft plan can work with the right players. And that's a perfect example of that. This broadcast is brought to you by No House Advantage. No House Advantage is changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play in pick'em contests versus other people for the shot at winning big cash prizes. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot at hundreds of thousands of dollars every week. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20 times your entry if you hit all your picks. Bet on up to 5 player prop over-unders, individual player matchups across every major sports league, including NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up with a promo code NHAWIRE. That's NHAWIRE at nohouseadvantage.com or download the app on the app stores to get a first deposit match up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. You won't want to miss out on this. My guest is Vlad Sedler from FTN Fantasy. Vlad, where can everybody find your work over at FTN Fantasy right now? What are you working on?
Oh, it's a lot of baseball. I've shifted focus. It's the beginning of the season. We had our MLB draft guide just recently launched right before Christmas over at ftnfantasy.com. Still got the football work going because it's important. Some DFS pieces, waivers are done. No more fab for now. So I have this little period of time of 3 months where there is no fab, which is probably good, for the mental health. Lots of baseball prep drafts. You and I were talking a little bit about drafts beforehand. So I'm excited, but I want to finish the football season strong here and crush it, win some championships.
Nice. Well, it's nice that you can rest your fab whispering voice for a while there, because you're going to have a big, long 6-month stretch run coming up here. Let's move on to wide receivers. We got good news from Arizona that Colt McCoy, not Trace McSorley, is going to play. It's good news if you have DeAndre Hopkins, who just got shut down last week against the Bucs. Had 10 targets, only 1 catch for 4 yards. This obviously bodes better for him, especially in a matchup against the Falcons, who are pretty weak in the secondary.
Yes. Colt McCoy is just your average Joe chalk guy, but gets the job done. He knows knows where his bread is buttered. It's DeAndre Hopkins. And it was really interesting watching that game, how many targets Hopkins had. I mean, I watched all those targets. For me, it was crucial. So myself and my colleague, Matthew Davis, were in the semifinals against one another. We went into that game and I had a massive lead. The only thing I had left was DeAndre Hopkins, and he had Marquise Brown. So I'm like, I think it was maybe 14-point lead. I'm like, I'm not really sweating it. Like maybe I could lose, and every ball sent Hopkins' way, just nowhere close. He couldn't catch it. Then Marquise Brown caught like a 47-yard catch. I'm like, oh crap. Now we're sweating. Now we're getting close. So it was wild to see. So Colt McCoy will be very, very much welcomed back into DeAndre Hopkins managers' lives.
Yeah, with Adams, with Hopkins, with Michael Pittman on Monday night, you could illustrate how a bad quarterback can really sink your elite wide out there. I won a game where I had DeForest Buckner get more points than Michael Pittman. And I won my game by 1 point in the RotoWire Stake League against Mike Doria. So thank you, Nick Foles, for being you, and Jeff Saturday for being you. I mean, it was crazy because Pittman's a good player. You should have had a reasonable expectation of a decent production. Not, the Chargers aren't easy, but at the same time, they're not. It's not Revis Island out there either.
Fun fact about Michael Pittman: he's one of only 6 wideouts in the league with 90 receptions. The guy has caught 90 balls. Like, you wouldn't really think of it, but he's been getting it done. He just hasn't scored touchdowns. He's basically the low man on the totem pole. There are just 2 scores all season. One of them came in week 1. But yeah,
That's
90
crazy.
catches. You can get to 100 this year.
That is crazy that he's had that many catches and so few touchdowns. I mean, that makes me want to draft him next year because
Oh
that's
yeah.
just like touchdown luck. I mean, yes, there are some wide receivers that are built more for the end zone than others. You can post up more and all that, but that strikes me as a whole lot of luck.
Mhm.
And if Pittman falls to the fourth round next year because of all that, then I'm definitely, and I might even take him in the third. We'll see, but
Yeah.
we'll see when it's Derek Carr or Baker
Mhm.
Mayfield or someone other washed up veteran throwing him the ball, or if they're going to actually draft a quarterback. We'll see, but yeah, I think I'll probably be back in on him
Yeah, and then Indy this week. I'm
at the
blanking on
Giants.
at the Giants. So maybe he kind of bolsters those numbers and grabs a couple touchdowns before the season's over. We'll see.
That would be beautiful. That'd be fine by me. Now that game's over on Monday night, so yeah,
Mhm.
that's totally fine. Let's talk about a happy guy. Let's talk Jahan Dotson with the Commanders. He's grabbing an increasing percentage of the target share, making highlight reel catches. Had one bad drop against the Niners, but at the same time, I I'm really impressed with this game. I really I want to have shares of him next year. I've been picking him up in some leagues this year. I even used him in DFS last week when he was
Mhm.
super cheap on DraftKings. He was
Yep.
like 3,900,
Oh yeah.
3,700. It was
Same.
beautiful. Made everything fit.
Mhm. He's phenomenal. He's one of those guys that just has that nose for the end zone. They're just certain wide receivers. They just know how to get open where it matters,
Yep.
and that's what he's been doing all season long. I mean, 3 consecutive games with a touchdown. He missed like a big chunk of the season. He missed weeks 5 through 9, and he
Hmm.
started off his career with 3 touchdowns in the first 2 games. So amazing, especially when you're thinking about like a Michael Pittman versus him. It's just crazy how that happens in the whole touchdown luck thing. But he's a stud. I think the narrative for this week is that Heineke has a better connection with McLaurin, and now that you have Wentz, people are like worried about Terry McLaurin, and they're seeing it more as a Jahan Dotson week. But I don't know. We'll see. It's random. These samples are so small, anyways. But I'm excited about his future as well, especially for an undersized guy with speed and great hands and good nose for the end zone.
Yeah, I think he runs really good routes in the end zone too. That's one
Yep.
of the reasons why I really like him so much there. Stephon
Ayuk-esque.
Dick. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just said Ayuk-esque.
Yes, Ayuk too. I mean, that's the thing. I still remember the play with Purdy a couple of weeks ago where that just gobbled up the Bucks
Yep.
corner there. It was beautiful. I loved it. Stephon Diggs really struggling the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Any concerns?
Um, no, not really. I mean, it's still Stephon Diggs. He's still the number 3 or number 4 on the season. Just Allen has been getting it done with other people, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the Dawson Knox 2 touchdown game, and James Cook has been mixing in. Like when you have all those weapons, it really just kind of hurt your elite guys. But when they really need him, I think, like for example, this basically fantasy ending game on Monday night
Yes.
against the Bengals that everyone has been waiting for since the best balls, got started drafting. I
Right.
think Diggs is going to step up. I think anyone that's advanced with some stuff on Diggs are going to be happily rewarded, or so we
Uh,
hope.
As a one of the few Bengals fans on the West Coast, I'm afraid you're right. I think he is going to. I think he'll recover. I mean, last week they were playing that crazy wind. I mean, you saw a
Mhm.
couple of those kicks where they just went sideways. I think Niners had a game against the Bears like that 10 years ago too in Soldier
Mhm.
Field, where it's just impossible to kick. It's fun to watch the kickers struggle so much, but it's not fun when it does to the passing game. But yeah, I tend to think you're right, and I'm still drafting him at the end of the first round next year too.
Yeah, of course. He's a bona fide first rounder, and he's really likable too. I mean, like everything that we've seen over the
Yep.
past his giving to kids and stuff like that, which is interesting because I don't know if you remember that clip from like a couple of seasons ago when he was in Minnesota and someone was interviewing everyone on the teams, like who's the last person on the team you would want dating your sister, and everyone said, "Oh, Diggs, Diggs, Diggs." It's really funny, but completely.
Really?
Yeah, I have to send you that clip. It's really
I've never
funny.
seen it. Yeah, I never heard of that. That's
Yeah.
pretty wild. So he seems like he's gone full circle there, I guess. So
Mhm.
that's pretty cool.
By the way,
As
I did want to ask you a question. If like you could magically make all of the stadiums be domed, like without having to worry about money or just like not be affected by weather, would you prefer that, or do you like the fact that you have just kind of different, variance in weather, and some teams are affected and some aren't?
I think that's a really good question. Would I have to attend these games in the weather?
No, this is just thinking selfishly for fantasy.
I think I like it the way it is.
Yeah.
I like Viva la difference. I understand it stinks when it's your team that gets affected by that. When it's your fantasy player that gets affected by that, especially. But at the same time, I think it adds a lot of character that Lambeau is Lambeau, Buffalo is Buffalo. Although the fact that they had to move a game away from Buffalo this year, I mean, it just speaks volumes of how nuts it's been in Buffalo this year, weather-wise. Not one, but two just utterly crazy blizzards. RotoWire's Tim Schuler, he's a Buffalonian, and he sent me a picture of his friend's house and talked. You get to see it was like it was a total caricature of a house with all the snow around it there, and how families were locked into just immediate family Christmases and all that in Buffalo. Scary stuff. So don't like that, but it's weird to see two extremes this early in the winter season too.
Yeah, it's wild, and I'm with you. I don't think I would change anything. I don't know if I'm one to talk here from either of us are from our homes in Los Angeles, where the weather's always nice. Like we got a little bit of rain yesterday. We're like, oh no, but that's just part of the character of the league, and just something you have to deal with. You're going to have whiteouts and bad weather in the fantasy playoffs, and just
exactly
part of the puzzle.
Just not those fake whiteouts like they had in Minnesota this past week. But anyways, we're going to tackle some of these questions and talk a little tight ends. But before we do that, quick note from our friends at Monkey Knife Fight. Football is officially back on Monkey Knife Fight, and with all the NFL action you're looking for, and if college football bowls are more your speed, they've got plenty of that too. On Monkey Knife Fight, there's no sharks, no salary caps, and no math. It's just easy to play, easy to win, daily fantasy player props. Join now at monkeyknifefight.com and you'll get your first game free. Then use promo code RWNFL to get your first deposit matched instantly up to $100. So what are you waiting for? Join Monkey Knife Fight today. I'm here with Vlad Sedler. Tight end. So your best primetime team has Kelsey. Somehow you used that Vlad magic and got him at 27. You passed on him at 15. I thought that's bold enough, and it is. And it still comes back to you. That's crazy. But my question to you is, what do you do with Kelsey next year? I mean, obviously, if you drafted him this year, you had a huge advantage over everybody else at the position.
I mean, yeah, he's getting up there in age, and obviously, it's usually a smart adage to get out ahead, a year ahead before it falls apart. I think we saw that baseball people finally saw that with Nelson Cruz. It looks like Father Time.
Yeah, there is a time. Yeah, I don't think Kelsey's there yet, though.
I don't think so either. I think he's the centerpiece of that offense and Mahomes' go-to guy. I think he's in it for another year, right? I mean, looks healthy, looks good. I mean, why not? Why is he all of a sudden age, 34?
Right. He's been extraordinarily healthy over his career too, which is a super big, bad, terrible jinx. So I'll try to not say and focus on that too much. But when you've got such an advantage over the league, I mean, end of the first, beginning of the second, again, I think that's where he was mostly going, except for your league there in that one league. But for the most part, that's where he went. I think that's justifiable again next year.
Yeah, and then think about the tight end premium, like at the
FFPC and all that.
Right?
Yeah.
Could be like a 1-1-1, 1-2 in some of those leagues.
I could see it being defensible. One other tight end I want to bring up is Evan Ingram, who has really come alive with the Jaguars lately. Finally fulfilling all that potential. He'll probably get hurt again. He's dealt with injuries all of his career, dealt with drops. But I have him in one of my championship game leagues, and he's been a godsend. He's been huge for me at that spot.
Never thought I'd see it. Honestly, I had written him off. He's just one of those guys, like a Max Kepler. Like I'm not going there. And that was the same thing for Ingram, but push comes to shove, you're in a tough spot on tight end, or you can't trust Hunter Henry anymore. At some point, you're like, all right, let's give it a shot midseason, pick up Evan Ingram. And then, lo and behold, drops like a 30, 40 fantasy point game for you. You're like, where the heck did that come from? Just take it. Just enjoy it, ride the wave. But, he hopefully should finish strong. Obviously Trevor Lawrence and him have a great rapport, great connection. And it's funny how that connection over time it was like Christian Kirk in the red zone early on, then it was Zay Jones for a while, then him, and then you just think how awesome this team is going to be when Mr. Calvin Ridley arrives next year. This is going to be a fun team for a long time to come.
Yeah, and eyes are wide open with Trevor Lawrence now too. He's seen it. He gets the game. It's a lot different now, and that's a beautiful thing too. And it's fun to watch when a quarterback comes of age. I had that experience last year with Burrow, and so now it's now it's another chance now for Jaguars fans. My co-host Nick Whalen's loving every minute of it here, so it's cool to see that you get excited for your team now after you've been down in the dumps for so long too.
And by the way, I asked, your baseball co-host, pod host Scott Genstad, and our good friend, I did ask him before the season started. There's one guy who's that one quarterback who's just going to absolutely break out that like people aren't really into. He said Trevor Lawrence. So
of course he did.
Another one for Scott.
He's very smart. Let's hit up some of these questions before we sign off here. A lot of either or questions. William asks, Bam Knight or James Cook? Who do you got?
You can go first because I just need to refresh myself.
Sure, of course. I'm going to go James Cook on this one here. I'm not thrilled about either. I think it's tough. I think I love the matchup for Bam Knight. I don't like his current form. Seattle's a great team to run against, but at the same time, he had the bad ankle. He didn't look that great when he was trying to run against the Jaguars last week. Give me Cook.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very high-scoring game there, Buffalo-Cincy, and you kind of want that end of the week, kind of end on a high note. And James Cook's, usage has been increased and gets a lot of work done per carry, catches some passes. So it's tough, but I think because you do have, the Zonovan, the Bam Knight experience, I don't want to say it's over, but I do think you never know whether Michael Carter or Ty Johnson could get mixed in. So
exactly.
Cook it is.
Chris Genova says, stumped on my flex for his championship game. Darius Slayton going against the Colts, James Cook against the Bengals. There's Cook again. Or are you gutsy enough to go Hassan Haskins Thursday night against the Cowboys? Who do you got?
I think I would skip on Haskins. I think it could end up being something where he just doesn't score, but maybe just racks up a few catches, but all in all middling. I do like Slayton the best out of the three receivers this week. I was an Isaiah Hodgins guy last week. I like Slayton this week, but this is still the defense allowing the least, I think one of the least fantasy points to opposing wideouts. Not a great matchup for Slayton. So by default, James Cook it is again.
James Cook it is. I'll say this about Haskins. If you are a significant underdog and you need to swing for the fences, I think he's the fence swinger for what it's worth, because I think the Bengals are pretty good against the run. Now they've got DJ Reader back. So thanks for the question, Chris. Henry says full point PPR needs 2 running backs and a tight end. Fournette, Swift, Akers, Stevenson, McKinnon, and tight end. We'll do one at a time. We'll do those 2 running backs there. Fournette, Swift, Akers, Stevenson, McKinnon.
I think Stevenson by default, I think is in no matter what.
I'd agree.
So that's one. And then Fournette, man, I liked him last week. Rams get who?
Rams get the Chargers.
Yeah, that's the play. Akers
it is. Who would have thought playoff winner Cam Akers is something we'd be saying, but so far it has been that case. Steven says for quarterbacks, Rodgers, Minshew, or Lamar.
I don't think Lamar is playing, unfortunately.
I don't think so either.
Didn't practice again. So Rodgers for me, Aaron Rodgers, in a very important game against a team he's very familiar with, that in a must-win game.
Agreed. Half point PPR, pick 2, Tyler Algier, Jerick McKinnon again, Slayton and Cook. A lot of familiar repeating names. I'll go Algier for sure. I think I really like that matchup against Arizona. I like what he's taking over. He had more carries, even targets over Patterson last week. So I think he's kind of the guy now.
He's a really good running back. I was impressed with him. I wasn't too into him. I had kind of moved him down my own personal rankings and wasn't really going there. And I'm a big Cordero Patterson fan, but obviously the tide is changing there a little bit. You might as well this is a run heavy team, young guy. Algier, I think for one in this matchup against Arizona is fantastic. And then, man, it's really hard not to play McKinnon these days, right?
Yeah, he scored every week lately. Yeah. I go McKinnon too.
Yep.
All right. Natasha says, she has Mixon, Higgins, and the Buffalo D. Opponent has Burrow. Should I swap out the Buffalo D for the Jacksonville D this week?
Would you go first while I try to download this question in my head?
Yes, you should. I have Jacksonville ahead of them. And the fact that you have Mixon and Higgins, it's a little plus as far as that goes in terms of swapping out the Buffalo team. I just think the matchup's so much better. You get this Houston team. It's using two different quarterbacks. Yeah, it's sometimes confusing because they're doing all these weird run plays with two quarterbacks on the field and all that. But nonetheless, I like the Jacksonville matchup a lot better.
What's going on here, Houston? I agree with you. Jacksonville against Houston, done deal.
Got Romeo says Juju or Cooks this week.
I think Brandon Cooks gets in the end zone again. I think just a good game script where they're going to have to be throwing a lot in the second half and just trying to catch up. So I think I prefer that. Too many weapons on Kansas City.
And we'll close out last one, Henry, tight end question. Taylor Higbee seems to find a connection with Baker Mayfield or Pat Freiermuth.
Steelers get the Ravens. Freiermuth has been a target monster. And then Higbee has just been on his tear. He scored no touchdowns, I think, until 2 weeks ago. Now he's got 3 in the last 2 games.
That's right.
Could we really have a repeat of it, like all the scoring being Akers and Higbee again? Could they just be on a roll? I don't know. I'm 50-50 on this one.
Yeah, I don't. And will there be a whole lot of scoring? I mean, it's weird because the Chargers, they've clinched a playoff spot, but they could climb up to 5th. I mean, the Ravens, they're not guaranteed to win, Sunday night against the Steelers, and they get the Bengals next week on the road. So they could leapfrog the Ravens. That wouldn't be so bad.
And by the way, Freiermuth has been not getting into the end zone. He's just got one touchdown this year. So if you believe in a little bit of regression positively, then Freiermuth's probably the play.
Yeah, I've got Higbee at 9 and Freiermuth at 10. Just for what it's worth there. So. Yeah, exactly. Thanks for everybody for all the questions. Vlad, thank you. Good luck in all your championship games. Good luck in prime time. I hope we finish 1-2 or at least 3-4. If Nelson and List top us, fine. Okay, I'll settle for 4th. But it's been fun to catch up, and I can't wait to do a lot of baseball content with you during the spring and the summer. I'm really looking forward to another good season.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for having me. Appreciate it. And let's finish big. Week 17. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. Vlad Sedler, everybody. Follow him on Twitter at RotoGut. Read his work over at FTN Fantasy. This is Jeff Erickson. Thanks again for listening to us. We got Mario and John tomorrow. Thanks for listening to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast.